not yet live.
Yes, okay.
We're live. Okay, it's wonderful to have you all here. Thank you, Michael. This is a very exciting topic. So I'm really excited to be here to be able to share this with you. I'm sure you will enjoy this. I'm here with Phil, who will very capably introduce himself in just a little while. My name is Mandy Chooi. I have been living in the Netherlands for 4.5 years, and I still don't speak enough Dutch to be able to do this in Dutch, so I do apologize. I came to the Netherlands to join ING, and I've been in ING for the whole time. I resigned from ING very recently, just about 5 months ago. And so while technically I'm sort of half in and half out still, I'm still doing 2 projects for them, so it's a very nice position to be in. I don't have to say goodbye to ING yet because I really, really love working there. I really love the culture, and I'm very proud about the transformation that I was able to help lead. The whole Think Forward transformation and the people aspect of the Think Forward transformation. I was very proud to be part of that. Before ING, in ING I was the head of talent and learning, and then the head of HR strategy and innovation. So before ING I was at Johnson. Before that I was at Honeywell, and then I did management consulting, and I started my career in Motorola. So it's a long ways.
You helped me build this phone.
It was actually kind of funny. When I started, I was trying to explain to my grandmother that I worked for Motorola. And at the time, she couldn't really understand what HR or talent or anything like that was. But the minute she heard Motorola, she was quite happy because it was concrete. She understood. So then I found out later, she told her friends that I worked in a phone factory, that I was making phones.
Very good.
She was very proud of me, so which is good. Anyway, so we're going to go into this topic today, and I'm going to take you on a little bit of maybe a little bit of a nostalgia journey. Those of you who are in HR, you remember what engagement surveys are like. So what we're going to try to show you today is you have a different alternative. You have a way of listening to your employees that is very different from the way engagement surveys used to be done. Because when you think about it, the most important part of communicating is listening. The most important, even when you say, speaking is really important because you want to be clear, but I actually think that the most important part of speaking is to be responsible for what the other person hears. That's good communication. And then as a company, your most important duty is to actually find ways to listen to your employees so that you know what they're thinking and what they're feeling. Those of us who've been through transformation knows it's not about technology, it's not about structure, it's not about organization design. It's not even about skills. It's about mindsets and behaviors. How do you get people to understand your purpose and to want to join you in your purpose? And for that, they need to feel heard and they need to feel understood. So I'm going to take you through what I hope to be a very resonant and very relevant journey for those of us who are in HR. Actually, how many of you are in HR?
Yes.
Wonderful.
100%. Wow.
How many of you have experienced either directly leading or being involved in running engagement surveys? Wonderful. This is going to work just great. Okay, great. So I'm going to take you through the 12 days of Christmas. I mean the 12 days of the MOS. The MOS is the massive online survey. Phil and I have named it the MOS, otherwise known as the 12 pains of MOS. I'm going to take you through each one of them very happily. The first one, the cost far, far outweighs the benefits. And I think you all know this. At last check, most companies of a decent size spends upwards of $1 million a year on engagement surveys. This is estimated to be a $2 billion a year industry. And the ROI that people get out of this, the ROI that companies claim to get out of this, is very, very small in comparison to the cost that's been put into it. The next one is my personal favorite. Tell me how you feel next year, because you've already told me how you feel this year. So this is all about, the surveys tend to be done annually. So some of you who might actually have surveys that are twice a year, you feel very, very proud of, well, we do it twice a year. But let me ask you this. If you wanted to know how your friends felt about you, will you go survey them twice a year? Or will you just go just have a conversation with them in real time? Because something happened, you wanted to go find out, how do you think, how do you feel? So you need to reach out and actually hear what people are saying. The interesting things about companies is that we think that finding out how well people are performing once a year is enough, performance management. Finding out how people are thinking and feeling once or twice a year is enough, annual MOS. When actually, when you think about it, the assets that we really care about, we monitor all the time. Revenue, customer sentiment, the temperature of your car engine, your heart rate when you're running. We want real data. We want to monitor these things because we care about them. But somehow when it comes to employee performance and employee sentiment, once or twice a year is enough. So this is one of my personal favorites. In most of my roles in all the companies that I mentioned earlier, engagement has reported to me. Those of you who've done this know this. It's sold to you as a very complicated science, right? You need a PhD to understand this. This is you'll be engaging with consulting companies, I shall not name names, but they will bring you statisticians and measurement psychologists and all these people who have models and regressions and all of these things, because this is complicated stuff. This is stuff best left to an expert, which is why I said don't try this at home, leave it to the professionals. It's been made into this giant profession that is supposedly so complicated, when all it is trying to listen to someone and trying to ask them, how do you feel? Do you like it? This one. How many of you have tried to ask your engagement survey provider, can we use our own questions? And the answer is always?
Yes, but
Thank you. It's either no flat out or yes, however, you're going to sacrifice the benchmark. The benchmark, that's very special. So the benchmark is how they hook you into not using your own questions, not writing your own questions that are culturally relevant for your company, but you need to use word for word the questions that they give you, because that's how you're going to be able to compare yourself.
I've got a new business model. No, I realize I've been running my business completely wrong.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
I'm going. Okay.
It is amazing. So that's another one of my favorites. This one is related to number 4. This is actually quite special. It makes the HR expert in engagement look very, very good, because you need to explain the benchmark to your business leaders, because nobody understands them. So you have a very important job explaining the benchmark to them. And what you can do is you can even get a little crafty. When you don't perform well against a particular benchmark, you can pull a different benchmark. You can narrow it down. So you could say, well, at least we outperformed the Scandinavian small and middle-sized OEM automotive manufacturers benchmark. So all you do is you pick a benchmark where you can perform better than, and you look good. Never mind the fact that you're actually not performing better than the companies that are, performing well in engagement. But this is, again, it turns it into a statistics game. So not something that's very helpful. This one. You're going through a transformation, certain things have changed, and you think we should change some questions in the engagement survey to find out how people think about this new initiative. And what do they tell you? No, you may not do that because you need a trend. How can you change the questions? Because if you change the questions, you cannot compare the results for this year with last year and the year before. There you go again. It's very important. It's the benchmark and it's the trend. So there you go. You have to follow them. Who knows what this is? Organization hierarchies. Exactly. Exactly. When you deal with these massive surveys, one of the most important groundwork that you have to do is you have to work with your provider to tell them how you're going to slice and dice your organization chart so that they can group the results for this organization to be compared with this organization and that organization to be compared with that organization. You get this wrong and it's all over. You know, how many of you have had the conversation where you go, this organization, the scores don't make sense. Oh, yeah, well, you know, because the new acquisition employees have just not been added as FTEs yet. That's so there are all these very complicated, supposedly very important things that simply get in the way of you having the opportunity to find out what people think about what's going on in the company. And it generates endless work. The whole survey business, those of you who have run engagement knows this. You need at least one full-time person on the front end, and you need all your HR business partners on the back end involved for at least a year and a half. It is amazing. It generates so much work, mainly because the surveys never go deep enough to explain why people are responding the way they are. You never know why. So what you have to do, again, it makes the HR, expert very, very useful and much, much needed. Right after you get your results, you have to explain the results to your business leaders. Then you have to choose which group needs extra focus. Usually those are the groups that have a lot of red in their results. Then you have to conduct focus groups or something where you actually directly ask questions to employees to find out what was causing the red, the low scores. Then you propose some actions. Then you have to prioritize the actions because there's so much going on in the organization. You can't just go and do things. So then it becomes this project plan after project plan, and in the end you just end up negotiating with when can we actually do an intervention to address the scores. Well, maybe in 18 months when we finish this acquisition and we've done that, then we can address this because there's just too much going on. It just becomes a very, very big organizational project that really does not help you, again, understanding how employees are feeling. Which comes to my next point, it is the opposite of agile. You do not respond when things it's not in the moment because there's so much process in the way. And this is one of my favorite, survey fatigue. How many have heard this phrase? You've heard this phrase? And this means, no, you cannot send another survey. People are so tired of surveys. But I want to understand, we've done some new things. We've got, what if you want to find out about a new leadership development program? You want to find out if people are actually benefiting from this new leadership development approach. Well, you cannot send another survey because we've already surveyed people enough. You've designed a new cafeteria. You want to find out how people are feeling. Well, I don't know. I don't know if you can send another survey. Maybe we can negotiate to see if we can add a few words in the existing survey. So all of this is just becoming very, very cumbersome. It makes life as an HR person feel like you're trying to drive looking in the rearview mirror. There's not much in the engagement data that comes from these large surveys that help you plan your future actions. By the time you see something, it actually is too late to do anything about it. And the final 12 pane of MOS is that, you know, this is what people are thinking. Do you really think anything's going to be different now? Because deep down, I think you know that people don't really tell the full truth on these surveys because they know that nothing will be done with their feedback, because that's what they've seen happen. So those are my 12 panes of the massive online survey. What I'd like to do together with Phil now is to show you an alternative. An alternative that is agile, that is in the moment. You can trigger it anytime. You can tie it to specific events, such as you just designed a new cafeteria, or you've had a new town hall meeting, and you wonder how people found the new town hall format. It drills down to root cause, and it's individualized. So each employee interacting with this approach will have it in an individualized way, and it drills down to the root cause very, very quickly, literally within seconds. It generates live data, and it gives you immediate results. So you get the option to actually see the results and the data live without having to wait for, I don't know what providers you use, but mine used to come back in about 2 months. So that was a bit late. And it's fun to use. It's as easy as, having a conversation. And I'll turn it over to Phil to show you what it will look like.
Thanks, Mandy. For me, that was really interesting to hear it from the HR perspective, the horse's mouth, so to speak. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself and OrangeTrail and how we got involved in this area and how I got involved with talking to Mandy about this. She was a client a long time ago. It feels like a long time in ING. And I guess there was a little bit of click even when we were a client. So when she left, it was like time to try and do something together. And I know Mandy was particularly interested in trying to develop a coaching bot. Okay, so automating the coaching process, which is a grand ambition when nobody's actually cracked the Turing test yet. Everybody know what the Turing test is?
Oh, we have one.
Can you tell from an online conversation whether you're talking to a person or a computer? It's not been done yet, okay? And until that's cracked, the coaching bot's on ice for a little bit. What we do as a company, we implement online collaboration, communication systems for large organizations. And the core thing that makes those work are conversations. Okay? People having conversations around the organization and capturing those. So when we saw bots, conversational bots, start to become a thing, especially in the external social media world, it was like how amazing you can start to automate these conversations. You can trigger conversations with people in organizations, not on a one-to-one, but a one-to-robot, and actually extract really interesting and useful stuff out of them. So one of the things that we do for our clients is to find really interesting new stuff like this, new technology, play around with it, fail with it, and find out where the most value can be created for a company. And when we started talking about, okay, where could bots really have a very useful application, one of the things we thought was in the field of the engagement survey, because it's a pain in the arse. Sorry, excuse my English. For a lot of people, it is a really big task. It's a mountain to climb. And we want to break that down into little bite-sized chunks for people. And I think we're going to show you a very easy, low barrier to entry way to do that today. And what we've actually done is built some bots for you to have a look at. So who's got Messenger on the phone? Okay. You guys will be able to interact with the bot and have a play around with it, and we'll come to that bit a little bit later on. What do I mean by a bot? Well, basically, a bot is who uses WhatsApp. Okay. It's automating a conversation on WhatsApp. Okay, that's one of the technologies. And WhatsApp is probably, certainly in the West anyway, it's one of the most prevalent chat technologies, and there are bots. If you've ever, some of the insurance companies in the Netherlands now, if you've had an accident, you send them a message and there's a bot that takes you through the process of everything that you need to do. So they're becoming much more prevalent in the external social media world. But basically the biggest platforms that they're available on are Messenger, Facebook, Facebook's version of the internal social platform, which is called Workplace, the one at the top right. WhatsApp, you probably all recognize that one. Yammer, an internal collaboration system from Microsoft. And anybody know what the one is, bottom right? So I know what standard of audience I'm talking to. No? Anybody? No? Slack, yeah, which is a collaborative platform for teams.
You all knew it. You just didn't
Yeah, I
recognize
know,
the
yeah.
logo, right?
Yeah. They're just trying to make me feel good, that's all. Just to give you some idea of the scale, you know, these chatbots have been around for about 8 years. Messenger, which we're going to use Messenger tonight as the platform to show you some stuff on, 2.2 billion users. 30% of the world basically use it. Astonishing figure, 30% of the world. 60 billion messages a day. And, you know, the scale of that is just hard to conceive, and the rate at which it's growing is just unbelievable. So people's familiarity with this form of interaction is growing rapidly. So there's no need to worry about people's engagement with the technology. The numbers are already there. Interesting comparison for you. So the 60 billion messages on Messenger, how many emails a day? Remember, email's been around since, anybody got a clue when the first email was sent? Late 80s, yeah, absolutely. So that's quite a few years, I think. My math's not very good, but it's quite a few years. This has been around for 8 years. What's the difference in the numbers? More or less for email? Less? Wrong. It's fired. Should get, yeah. You can leave, yeah, that's it. The exit's over here. Okay. So it's more by a factor of 10. Okay. It's just over 3 times as big. But basically the graph's going like that. And I reckon a year, maybe a little bit more, it'll exceed the number of emails sent. And the number of emails sent is going down like this. This is the new way to communicate because it's personable and it's instant. Why? Does anybody recognize that graphic on the left? I was wondering whether anybody would know what that is. Absolutely, very good, yeah. So for the idiots, I mean the not as well, no, I don't mean that. I mean the people who don't know, not quite as old, some of them. That's how you used to talk to computers before you had graphic interfaces. Before you could click buttons, you had to know what to type to them. And interestingly, suddenly, out of nowhere, that interface is becoming the most popular way to interact with technology again, which I find quite strange. But now we have the ability to make it personable and individual and contextualize. Whereas this stuff, you had to learn this stuff off by heart, which was quite a pain. You'll agree with me, I think. So the interface, I think, is really interesting, this ability to type. Again, why are bots good? You know, who hasn't got a mobile phone? See, no hands going up. I should have asked the question the other way around, and everybody would put their hand up.
Oh, that just reminds me. I have a 13th one on my 13 panes, 12 panes. The 13th one is those of you who've worked in companies that have manufacturing, you will know that we cannot survey people in factories because they have no computers. Ta-da.
We've got a client at the moment, 200,000 people, 193,000 of them basically on the shop floor. how to reach those people is a big problem.
Yeah.
This stuff, instant and available. It's here in your hand. Shouldn't be underestimated. That slide doesn't work. There you go.
Oh, there you
That
go.
looks better. Interestingly, just last year, access to the internet via mobile devices exceeded for the first time access from desktop devices. And that growth curve, again, is going to vastly outstrip desktop devices. Another interesting statistics, most desk-based workers use on average, what was it, Giselle? 3.5 devices a day? 3.5 different devices, which is usually mobile, desktop, laptop, tablet. So the experience of doing that is spread across different things. And I think some of these massive online surveys are still thinking of people sat behind computers. Not many of us do that anymore. So, should we go around to a demo? Were you interested to see what we're talking about? Okay.
You get to play with it.
Yeah, but first, anybody know what this is? But apart from our logo in the middle.
That's
That's
the
just the
OrangeTrail
selling
logo.
bit. You know what a QR code is?
Yeah.
This is the messenger equivalent of a QR code. Okay. So one of the interesting things when Mandy mentions deskless workers, people in factories, how do you get to them? How do you get them to participate in these things? If you just have one of these anywhere in the building and you scan it with your mobile phone, up pops the bot that you want them to interact with. It's as simple as that. Okay. People usually ask a question when I've said that. No? What about security? Okay. Yeah. Couldn't anybody just scan that? You can also link it, you can also password protect it. So the first thing you tell the bot is what the password is to log into the bot. So not everybody can access it. Okay. Android, iOS, Android, put your hands up. Both? No? So mostly you've got iPhones. Okay, so you need to read these instructions, and I'll come back. But basically what we're going to show you is 3 bots. But first I'll show you the bots on screen, okay? And then you can play around with them yourself. So what we've put together are 3 very simple bots. Now, they can be as complicated or as simple as you want them to be. We were very pleased when we built these bots for the first time because they are pretty, I think, speaking for myself obviously, but I think they're pretty cool. But they are quite underwhelming in the fact that they like take about 3 or 4 seconds sometimes because the interaction is so simple and easy. Yeah, it's nothing really, really complicated.
It's the opposite of a massive survey.
Absolutely. So let's just take them one by one and
Could you maybe in your presentation already compare it to what is already existing? Because I have used these kinds of things already, I think, at 4 meetings or so, when they wanted to have instant feedback or instant opinions or so. So, I mean, obviously it's recent, it was just in the last 2 years.
Yep.
But you're certainly not the first and the only one.
No.
So if you could distinguish yourself a bit, that would be, at least for me.
that we're trying to widen this not just to particular instances like meeting feedback, but to problems that the whole organization faces.
Sure, but if I can program an app the way that it asks for one special meeting, I can surely program it the way that it asks an engagement survey.
Absolutely, of course you can. Yeah. You can. You can apply it to any particular problem that you think it demands. And one of the things I'd be really interested to hear from you guys later on is where you think else it could be applied. Obviously, we have some ideas, but we think there's many, many more, and we'd really like to hear some of those. Anyway, so this is feedback bot. So first thing, it already knows who I am. Okay, it's authenticated through myself. It knows who I am, and it'll respond individually to all of you as well. So do I have a moment? Well, yes, I do. Okay. Am I ready? I think so. Now, all we've done is just taken some samples of questions. We've not taken anything and drilled down the whole way, but just some samples of questions. So do you believe the leadership team takes your feedback seriously? No, absolutely not. So already you can see there's a tree diverging. So because somebody has answered no, we're starting to take part in a different conversation than if they'd answered yesterday's. How does that make you feel? Well, I'm disappointed, to be honest. Okay, I can now link to another system and it tells me who my manager is. Would you like to talk to my manager? Well, actually, no, I wouldn't. So let's click no. You can play around with all the different options on this, obviously, but okay. So you can have any exit route that you would like here.
Oh, but so it's not anonymously because it says HR department will contact you. I will never touch it again because oh my God.
But that's the
What did I do?
okay. That's the script. Whether you want to disclose that or not is entirely up to you. So you can make it completely anonymous. You can have a button in there that says, I'm happy to share me linked to my answers. So if you want to do stuff like that, you have to know who you are. If you don't want to do stuff like that and you just want to collect statistics, then you make it anonymous.
I think when you play around with the bot, you'll see that what we've done is to just take some very basic engagement questions and drill it down so you get to a little bit of a feeling of why someone feels that way and what are some other questions you could ask. It's sort of like adaptive questioning, right? You ask the general opening question, and depending on what the response is, you get to drill down into the next and the next questions.
Wouldn't be, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No, please do.
tempting for employers if they want to get rid of someone and that data comes available, gives this full expression of the guy saying, well, I don't like this, I don't like that, blah, blah, and you come back and of course say, look, I mean, we have the data stating this employee is not a good employee. You have to be a good employer and a good employee.
Yeah, but you would never be a good employer by misusing the data for it.
Doesn't say that. Doesn't say.
Well, I can tell you based on labor law.
Yeah, but listen, if I'm an employee filling that out, okay, I would be tend to like, who's going to see all that data?
Yeah.
Am I protected?
Okay. I think that's a bigger question than whether this survey, this method of doing it delivers. And I think one of the big problems with surveys is people's mistrust of giving information away and feeling it's linked to them.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you don't do surveys internally, you do them externally, because people don't trust internally.
Yeah. But again, I think that's a bigger problem than the mechanism of delivering it through this. I think that's a fundamental human thing. But maybe with some of the examples we're going to show you, the fact that you can link it to action, you can have that conversation with your manager and it can be set up there and then, gets around some of the big problems of people feeling, I'm not going to participate in this because there's nothing in it for me. What's in it for me if it's just a set of data that comes out? Nobody's going to address my problems. But if I can voice my problems and something is done with it, that starts to change the culture of your organization. Anyway, let me just come on. Thanks for the question. This is a really simple one. This is like 3 seconds of what we've called a pull spot. But these are just very basic examples. Again, I think, the fact that it asks you, do you have time? You can say no. But the fact these things are so quick and they're handy and they're to hand, it's not an email that you have to come back. You can also time them if you say no, that it comes back to you a day later, or a week later, or an hour later. You can set all that up. Again, this one has a different tone of voice. It's not just text, okay? That's the interesting thing about it. You can really reflect the culture of your organization and the tone of your organization. Very important for comms people. Briefings. Did I attend a briefing? Yes, I have. I didn't get it. I didn't understand what the briefing on the restructuring was about. Thanks for letting me know. This will help us decide if more or better briefings are needed. Just to be clear, your reply is on this. Anybody know who it is? Very good. Okay, we'll have a conversation about that afterwards.
Yeah, this
But-
one is simple because this is an example of having a very simple pulse bot that you can trigger based on an event. So this one was after a town hall that announced something. So you could always, they're so easy to build and they're so simple. A lot of these choices, you now have the option to build a very short bot and just trigger it immediately without having to go through all of the massive survey process. Decisions such as anonymity, privacy, data protection, all of these things, I mean, that's always going to be part of our jobs as HR professionals. Those are decisions that always needs to be made ahead of time. What this is merely a technology, a methodology to help you build survey questions very, very easily, drill down at least 3 or 4 layers as to why people feel the way they do, instead of just, I feel 4 out of 5 or I feel 2 out of 5. At least now you can ask why 2 or 3 times. And there's also an opportunity, if you don't want to do anonymity, there's an opportunity for you to take the next step to push action, such that it just doesn't go into a black hole of I've responded and let's see if they do something with my feedback. You could push them to take action themselves. It again, you start to teach the culture of taking
eating
action.
an elephant in bites. You don't try and. That's what I think massive online surveys do, is to give you a whole host of data, and it goes back into the organisation, and it's like, what are we going to do with it? What actions can we take? And it seems like if you miss the middle bit out and just make it much simpler. I mean, how simple this can be. You can deploy a pulse bot 15 minutes, okay? From the thought.
How then? How do you, because you need to install it on your phone. Let's say in our company, not everyone has an iPhone. I mean, you have a personal phone. There's always this thing about personal company phone.
That's
Absolutely.
another
Do you
decision.
have to then
Okay.
download, or how does that?
Well, let them try it.
Yeah, we'll do. You can try it in a minute, but to answer your question very quickly, if you've got something like Yammer, or you've got something like Facebook's Workplace deployed in the organisation, then this is already you can do this now, and within the risk and compliance constraints of your organisation.
But also Messenger.
Not in Messenger's a different thing, because that doesn't have your organisational boundaries around it, so you have to protect it.
I can tell you that hardly any individual on the shop floor will download something from the company to their private phone.
But Messenger won't be downloaded from the company.
No, but maybe, because if you look for the person OrangeTrail feedback bot, then you just see immediately the bot, so you don't have to install anything.
No, absolutely. You don't.
I also did.
So it works on Messenger as well.
Yeah.
You don't need
No, this is Messenger.
Yeah.
This is Messenger.
Then you don't have to download anything.
No, but the converse of that is your IT department jumping up and down saying you can't use stuff that sits outside the organisation. And that's why I suggested it is possible to password protect it, because you can find it. You found the OrangeTrail bot. You can protect it and say you give the 2 things separately, and it's like 2-factor authentication. Okay.
Well, let's just
But
have them do
the
it.
bots, Messenger, 2.2 billion people, 30%. So many people in your organisation are already going to have it.
On the follow-up, because I get it, it's a conversation, right? So that's a one-on-one. But then, now as the HR director, you want to kind of oversee, help or see maybe the sentiments or
Okay.
of a group or of individuals, or understanding that.
Yep. The-
Right. Does it remain individual, or
Okay.
do you also aggregate it on
Yeah.
The question was about, for the audience out there, the question was about sentiment and how you aggregate the results. Yes, you can. You can cut the data in any way that you would like afterwards. And as Mandy already alluded to when she did her introduction, was you can make it live. You can actually feed that data out. There's a 15-minute delay between a group of results coming in and then it being pushed out again. But technically, it produces a CSV file. The CSV file is then linked to something that gives you a dashboard of your data. So you can see the results coming in immediately, which I think for me, is one of the big things as well. It's like it happens in the moment.
Then the next step. So say you did this, you have the activated data, and then you decide as HR department or management or so, hey, I'd like to send a message or ask further questions to all the people who are dissatisfied or so. So then I can start it again by filtering, okay, even anonymously, all the 330 who were dissatisfied with, I don't know, the cafeteria or so, they ask, okay, what should you do? Or so, as a next round.
Absolutely, yes. And I'll come on to the triggers that can activate bots in a moment, because this is the third one, then you guys can play around with it. I'll just show you very briefly this one, but I think you get the idea of how it works. The interface changes on different devices. This is just done on a desktop because that's what we're using today. Hi Phil, do you have a moment? Again, slightly different tone of voice. This one, sure. See, unless you choose to share, and you can have a button then say, yes, I'm happy to share, or I'm not happy. So puts one data into one path and another data into another path. So knows who I am, therefore it can link into internal systems and say where you are. Spot on, just checking. No, they haven't. Talked about my progress. It's difficult to talk about your progress when you're at the top, yeah? Well, it's a difficult audience, you guys.
I don't think, can you see it from back there? It's probably too small for you to read it.
Would you find it useful if you had a discussion with someone soon, yeah, about your progress? Yes, please. Again, I can set this up for you now if you'd like, okay? I think this is the interesting stuff. Now, immediately, no waiting, no getting data back, no results, immediately. So he knows your manager. My manager's Wendy, and I'll meet Wendy. You can hook it into your agendas.
Well, I would be in a very poor place if I need a bot in order to make the employee finally talking to his manager.
No, but I see many organizations where this doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. You might think it's happening.
Trusting the bot to be anonymous.
Yeah, I think that's a tricky thing.
You have the opportunities to flavor it any way you like. You can have it anonymous, not anonymous. With the non-anonymous stuff, it gives the ability to take action.
Right?
Absolutely.
I understand that you can do it technically, and I think you're also the techie here. But it's
I'm not technical at all. I'll like to say that.
Yes, it is the trust.
The trust becomes, this changes the culture of how your organization has conversations. How you build that trust is by having simple conversations and showing action as a result of them before you start jumping into really complicated, deep things about this sort of stuff.
Maybe employees will like bots better than their managers. No,
I don't think that was actually far from the truth for a lot of people.
But I think that there's still a lot of fear and there's still some resistance to the fact of having a bot. I think
Okay.
because I'm looking at this and I think it's excellent. The only thing is I'm just thinking in a culture where there's no bot yet, to start with employee engagement and then having a bot talking to you rather than
I agree, but when you say there's no culture of using bots yet, there is, because they're using them now, not in the organization, but they are using them now. And absolutely, and I was having a conversation with Michael before you guys arrived, and I think one of the interesting things that's happened in technology over the last 2 or 3 years is the technology you have at home is more advanced than what you have at work. You're much further ahead. So when I hear this from people, well, our people don't have mobile phones and they don't use, absolutely, they do. Sorry, they're way ahead of you.
That's why a lot of companies are now bringing your own device because it's better than the old laptops. Yeah, I fully get that. I'm just thinking within a set culture of a company, maybe I should, I'm thinking first of maybe having the employee handbook turned into a bot, so that people can start building, let's say, not calling our department all the
Let me just,
To build the culture
okay.
of it,
Maybe we shouldn't have shown these examples. I mean, me and Mandy talked about the ones we're going to use, but one of the other ones that we've started developing is the new starter bot. And the new starter bot does interesting things because it says, like, you know, you're here for your first day, you've got a meeting, you need to go to this person, and you can time it so it comes back and messages you, you know, you're on your fourth day, how are you doing? It can plug into all the things that you need to happen and automate a massive part of it.
and also onboarding, I wrote down onboarding, and also rather than having a competition with a manager versus a bot, because maybe managers get afraid of the bot, of having the bots helping managers in providing feedback.
Absolutely, I think that's a very...
Also to coincide with, rather than something strange, but let's say seeing it as an integral part of...
A very astute comment. One thing I should say about bots, and this is my little dig at Mandy about AI, is that people know their machines, okay? They might feel like conversations, they might feel you're interacting, but they do know their machines.
But so, actually what's interesting is what's behind it in the reporting and what do you use and how do you use that data, because that's actually what as an organization as an employee you get this sort of, these questions, but what do you then actually do with it? Because there must be some reporting of data that sort of comes out
Yeah.
that you then use, right?
Absolutely, but it depends what you're asking.
Yeah.
You know?
So what the bottom line is, whatever you ask will be returned to you as data. And it can be individual, it can be aggregated. So it's no different than any other type of data. What is different is the data is practically live. You can get it within minutes. So it's very, very fast. And to your point too, the bot technology is there and it's available. We can use it to do anything. I mean, there are companies who are already starting to put their HR employee handbook on a bot. You know, things like people can go to the bot to ask, how many vacation days do I have left? Or, you know, that sort of stuff.
We've just seen one yesterday, which is an expenses bot. And what you do is, actually, you just photograph your receipt. And because it knows who your manager is, it sends your message to your manager, and it basically says approve or not approve, and just click, and it's done. It goes straight to the finance system.
So then Employ, is that the company called Employ?
No, not
Okay, because I was starting to do the same, they provide the same tool. It links everything,
Yeah.
onboarding, offboarding,
You know,
expenses, whatever.
I've seen lots of like interesting use cases, but I find them quite sort of like basic. Like there's a visitor bot and basically reception. When somebody arrives, it sends you a message saying, Mandy's here to see you, and it says, you know, I'll be 10 minutes, send her up, who's Mandy? Yeah, so I usually click who's Mandy, and then they send her away. You know, and but for me that's okay. A little bit of automation, quite cool in a way, but it doesn't really add a massive amount of value. I believe the bigger use cases, the application and the understanding of being able to have a conversation with people in an organization is where the real value of these things are. Let me just finish this, then you can play around with it, and because some of the questions might be picked up later when we come through some of the things. Let me just finish this one off. So, yes, please. So it's messaged Wendy, waiting for her to confirm. She's sat at home at the moment, okay, so I hope she responds. There you go. Have we got a good Wi-Fi connection here? Okay. This is all about tone of voice, yeah? You don't have to put this stuff in, but it's just showing the capabilities of the stuff that you can do. So,
Phil, you highlight the interaction of the conversation. I only see closed
yes,
questions.
absolutely. That's a very good point.
Will you, I mean, do you practice more open questions to really get open comments, and then do you actually analyze?
Yes, you can. This is done because 90% of, well, the most successful bots out in the wide world, not in organizations, are ones that use buttons to drive the conversation. Because people, its speed of interaction is the most important thing. What's interesting is you can, and we'll show you, you can play around with it, there are certain words that you can type in, and we'll see if anybody finds them, that when it hears that it responds to you, okay? So you can have free-form boxes, and if you say, well, I'm feeling really frustrated, it will pick up on the word frustrated and give you a response based upon the fact that you say you're frustrated. Just take that triggering elsewhere. If you have internal collaboration platforms, or you want to scan your email, and you see the word fuck appearing in somebody's responses all the time, that can trigger a bot to go and ask them, hey, what's happening? Why are you swearing so much?
Yeah, I'm interested in how that works on global teams. The platform engagement surveys, the problem has always been local attachments to teams, so you have higher engagement when people are local, which then more and more global teams. How do you create engagement in global teams? So how can this help improve that relationship with global teams?
I didn't hear the beginning of your question.
Yeah,
Can you
I
repeat?
mean, you have many global teams, and engagement surveys classically is engagement takes place in local teams, right?
Right.
How can this help further help global teams to make that that link happen?
This is actually one of the biggest benefits of having this type of way to engage the conversation. Because one of the reasons we wanted to introduce the concept of the engagement bot, as opposed to some of the more simpler ones that you had mentioned earlier, is the opportunity to use the internal collaboration technology. So if you have internal workplace, the Facebook internal workplace, you start to have global distributed teams that are already collaborating. Or if you have internal teams that are on Slack, Slack is an opportunity to collaborate, particularly if you have agile teams or teams who are using Kanban boards. All of these things, they're not sitting together, but they're working, they're collaborating on one project, and they need a platform where they are talking and saving all their files and sharing. This is an opportunity for them to actually engage with each other. Depending on how you set up your bots, you could have a bot that looks at only that one team and what types of collaboration questions or relationship questions they might have with each other.
Just to build on what Mandy's saying, the interesting thing about bots in workplace, Facebook's workplace, is they don't just happen in chat, you can actually have them in groups. Yeah. So when the group's having a conversation, it can be triggered by certain things, and a bot can come in and say, okay guys, it seems like there's some problems, what's the problem? And
there's quite a big potential behind it, because if you work teams together and you see somebody just on a video conference, you know somebody is frustrated, but you cannot follow through on why and what's behind it, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Anyway, these are here for you to...
Phil, one more question.
Yeah.
Can you tell something about the intelligence of the system, how the outcome is being used, how the system can filter it and make it useful for an organization? How is it being clustered and how is it being presented in the end?
In any way you would like.
That's up to you.
Okay, I think the most intelligent thing about it is the thought that goes into the preparation of it, not the execution or the reasoning of the data, which is, what is the one question we want to ask that we want to get an answer to? Yeah. Because I think the thing with big online engagement surveys, you ask so many things, so the possibilities are endless of cutting it, dicing it, comparing things that aren't really comparable. You need to bring it back to what Mandy started with, is if you're asking your friends for feedback about your behavior, you'd go and say, tell me about my behavior. You'd ask them one question. You'd engage with them in a very personal way. So this is splitting it up and putting the intelligence into structuring it in a very different way. The technology can deliver whatever you want it to deliver, and I think maybe partly what was behind your question about the intelligence of the analysis is you can use keyword analysis and linguistic programming to be able to judge the sentiment of what people are asking. These are just simple yes, no, thumbs up, thumbs down, smiley
there's
face.
kind of different, there's different commitments, right? How complex do you want to make your engagement bot? So a simple way to, the way I like to think about it is, I'm sure you've seen these, like when you come out of a store, they've got this stand where you could hit the happy face, the neutral face, or the angry face. Those 3 buttons, right? Or you smack it. So, okay, so imagine that system if this is a little bit, the simplest engagement bot is that system. So let's say I hit angry face. Imagine if it displays the next question. Why are you angry? And it gives me 2 other buttons to hit, and I hit that one. And then it comes up with a 3rd question, and it gives me 3 other buttons to hit. That's all this is. That's a very quick and easy way. So just imagine if the retail store that had those 3 faces buttons were able to respond to every time you hit, to come up with 1 more question and 1 more question. Just imagine the depth of data that they have at that point.
The interesting thing about that is you're stuck at the door with those things.
Yeah.
You know, you're walking out of the room.
Yeah.
This is on the train on the way home. This is on the bus. This is on the metro. This is in the bath. This is on the toilet. This follows you everywhere.
At the simplest level, if only all you did was ask 2 more questions, the depth, that probably saved you 500 rounds of focus groups, what you would have had to do in the massive online surveys before.
And remember, you can vary it, you can deploy it in 15 minutes.
So it's a matter of the complexity, how complex you want to take this. And your point is a very important one. You have to slowly demonstrate small wins to your organization. You can't just come out of the blue with, here's a really big engagement bot, I'm going to ask you all your deepest, darkest thoughts and secrets. Nobody's going to believe you. But if you start very small and they see that you take their suggestions seriously and it actually results in consequential changes, then that's what the trust will start to engender, and then you can start to build.
That's where I think people have lost engagement with engagement surveys, is like, I don't see the result of what I'm doing. What's in it for me? Nothing. There's a lot in it for the organization, but nothing in it for the employee.
But anyway, enough of us talking. We just want you to play with these.
I'm going to change this. I'm going to not let them on for a minute.
Why are you not going to let them on?
I'll let them on in a minute. But okay, just to, because I think we've touched quite a lot of the topics, and I'll come back to you in just a moment, okay? But this is bite-sized, okay? It's not a big online 750 questions, 1 question, yeah? As simple as possible. That's the way to break it down. But you can do it so much more frequently. You know, every Friday, every day, you can, bite-sized is the way to think about it. Thing is, it's personal, like Phil, it knows who I am, it can respond to me. I know it's a robot, but it actually feels quite natural, the way you structure the conversation. Now, I don't know whether anybody noticed, there's time differences in between people replying. You can actually, the bot just does it instantaneously, but we actually put delays in just to make it feel more natural, like somebody's typing. They're not, of course they're not. Well, apart from Wendy, of course, that was real. Okay?
How are you going to avoid the feeling of Big Brother is watching you?
But doesn't it depend on the culture of the company already?
The question's about Big Brother and how people feel that this is Big Brother. Yeah.
Worse.
If you can examine or investigate every week or every day, and you do it on a regular basis, you can intervene in teams, and isn't it very much
Okay.
the creation of how we want to have people?
Big Brother implies there's no action taken, that it's just something observing you. I don't think this has the feeling of that. And I am not suggesting for one moment that you deploy this every hour of every day to the same people. That you're just going to create exactly the same problems.
It does really require a culture that really wants to fix the thing.
Yes.
So that
Yeah. But
with other
for me, that's the biggest driver, is the fact that you can take action as a result of identifying a problem for an individual is the biggest driver of cultural change. And only companies that want to do that, if you can demonstrate that, people will engage with it. Go,
It really
what's in
is.
it for me answering this question? Something's going to change as a
Exactly.
result.
It's really about, you can start really small. It could be, you know, the next town hall you have. And this is, you know, maybe instead of calling it an engagement survey, it's just feedback. It's just simple feedback. And if with one question you realize that everyone thought it was too hot in there, the room was too small, it's too crowded. And the very next time you have a town hall meeting, you solve the crowdedness and the heat problem. That is worth it. That alone is worth it.
Anyway, let's just very quickly, and I will come back to your question, I promise, because I ignored you. That's terrible. It knows who you are. If you hook it into your systems, it knows who your manager or your team is. The triggers, an event, you know, there's been a town hall, so this is going to trigger a bot. It's scheduled, okay, it can, based upon it's going to go every week, or you've been an employee now for 3 days and this should happen. So it can follow a pattern. You can do it manually. You can say, okay, seems like there's a problem, production is dropping in this factory, we're going to deploy a bot and find out what the problem is. You can do active listening. If you've got internal platforms, it can listen to sentiment analysis. Based upon the sentiment analysis, then you can say, okay, so what question do we want to ask? What sentiments are we hearing? And then deploy that. You can do it also based upon absence. People aren't contributing, people aren't taking part, people aren't responding to things, and find out why. Which is, I think, is probably more interesting than some of the active things. So these are just some of the triggers that can cause it.
Does the trigger also have, like, from the employer to employees, or can the employee trigger?
Well, yo.
No?
Yo.
Oh, okay. Like, no.
Yes, you could. Would you want to? Is a whole other question. Maybe that shouldn't be addressed right now. But yeah.
And you
Yeah.
said the data gets saved, gets stored
Okay.
on your server, on an employer server.
If you did this, for instance, on your internal, your data is produced internally. If it's done on Messenger, your bot produces a CSV file that you can then hook up into your systems.
Okay, but what does your company offer? So that I have server place for it on my own.
If you're running Workplace for Facebook internally, then this will output internally to your system. We don't provide any technology. We use other people's technologies to do this. Yeah? Yeah. So if it's an internal network, it's your data that's being produced. If it's from Messenger, the bot can provide a CSV file, basically.
And it's not being kept by Facebook now?
No. Well, okay. I don't work for Facebook, so I can't guarantee those sort of things.
No
but
guarantees for Facebook.
Do you already have experience with it to see how much take-up is and how people actually do it from first off and how that grows?
we've not done any really big. We're getting to the first stages of big implementations, but on the small implementations, it's like 98% participation.
Because I can imagine that's what you need.
Yeah, I mean, just very quickly, data things. You know, this is sort of thing you get out. You don't want to. That's not really much use to anybody. This is a lot more useful. Dials, gauges. You can make it look, depending on what you have internally, you can make it look however you want. You can have alarms. Interesting. We have a client who wants to hook it into the Hue lighting system in your organisation, right? Okay. Very good. Yeah, you see. Or sales happen, or so many responses happen, and all the lights come on green. She'll sell you some. There you go.
It would be cool if it happened when the town hall had just ended. A minute when we treat you as a color.
It's blue today.
Sell the shares. This is an interesting one that I've seen. I'm not sure really what the use case is, but actually giving the feedback to the people taking the survey. So the survey ends and it says, well, 78% of people were happy with this, 12% not really feeling, and 10 were really unhappy with it. So that's giving direct feedback to the people who are taking part in it, which I guess could be a valid use case in some instances. I'm just going to put it out there. Action takes action. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. You know, set meetings up, trigger other events. I think this, when it's on the one question base, this is where the real value is to the organization. This is cultural change driven through technology. And that's about it. Some of these things, you know, training bots, onboarding bots, really cool. The engagement bot, the event bot, coaching bots. You know, there are things that you can do that you can automate, but we'll come back.
I have another question about, you are like a company offering, right? So we established you don't offer the technology, and a lot of things can be entered as we want it, right? Which is also a curse, because you see now, like for example, HRIS, right? The curse of the past was it has to be like this. Now the curse with the SASS, Workday, etc. is like, it's all my fault because it was my configuration, right? And which would then bring in all the Workday consultants to do it for me, where the real money for Workday is. And so is that your concept?
That's a very good business model, actually. So, you know,
I
okay,
understand that I get more flexibility, but flexibility is indeed also a curse when it comes to it. So do you, do you have like, I don't know, templates and we can adjust them, or how does it work? So again, also to distinguishing.
Yeah, the question is about how are these things sold, or how do you deploy them? Are they standard or are they flexible? Yeah. But I'm just repeating the question for the people who are watching on the video. Okay. To answer this, the market is developing. It's very new. Okay, so not many people, not many organisations are engaging with this yet. My speculation on how it might go forward is there will be a range of standard bots that become available from certain organisations. Probably we're going to be one of them, that says, okay, you want an event-based bot that gives you feedback on a particular event. So you'll be able to buy that, rent it per use, and just deploy it on whatever technology that you have. So there'll be standard bots that people want to have that irrespective of the tone of voice of your organisation, this is a fairly standard way of doing it. But I don't think that's where the most value of using these things are in. The most value is that translation between something's happening and we want to find out about it, and the skill of developing a question to be able to deploy. There are templates, like I say, once you've understood that process, it's 15 minutes to deploy this. So we can sell the ability to deploy exactly what the questions that you want to ask are.
So you do have templates.
Yo.
Well, I think just maybe it might help for clarification. The goal of this evening session is really not to sell anything, obviously not. It really is for us to show you this is the potential of what you could use bots for beyond the very simple bots. The reason we chose not to talk about really simple things like customer service and HR handbook and all those stuff is because that's kind of obvious. I mean, you know what that's about. We're trying to introduce the next step thinking, next level thinking of what bots could be used to really drive the value of engagement.
You know, the decision-making tree, the question
Exactly.
path that
So
it follows
this
is where the real value is.
So the adaptive questioning technique is really where you get the value of using this technology and the smarts of asking the right question at the right time. For you, hopefully the value of the session is, you know, a bit of awareness and a bit of intrigue of knowing that this actually is quite simple to do. You can do it yourself. You can do it with a bit of help. Also, perhaps understanding that if you have Workplace or some kind of internal collaboration platform, this becomes so much easier, and you can actually do this immediately. It just adds another repertoire in your HR toolkit, really. For us, the value of doing this session is really to get your questions, like what you've already been sharing, to help our research into thinking where else, you know, what's next? Where can we go with this next? Where else can this be used at the next level for HR and for organization culture change? So it's not so much, you know, we definitely are ahead of the curve in terms of what HR can use bots for. no, we don't have something that we're going to sell because that's not the purpose of this session.
No, to try and answer your question better, because I know you're dissatisfied with my answer.
No,
But
I'm satisfied with
yeah.
yours.
No, that's because she's much better than me. That's obviously. We could have taken the approach, okay, so there's a Gallup survey, there's these questions that they ask, we'll build bots for each of the questions and put them out there. But I think the ability to actually change the flavour of it, to ask a question when it's appropriate to ask the question, is where the power of these things lie. So yes, the answer is you can drag and drop stuff. There is a template framework that you can just drop stuff into, but it's the thought behind it that's much more important than the process of actually doing it. Of where I want to deploy that question, what I want to achieve with that, and how I'm going to create action in the organisation as a result of it. Sorry,
No, actually, her question.
Your yes.
Yes.
Now I wanted to check with you. I wanted to come back to the question about the reporting, because actually, I think it's important. If you have a team of 10 people and maybe only 3 will respond, I mean, for the engagement survey, you do not get any data if you don't have a minimum of 5 people responding on a certain number. So, I mean, how do you deal with that?
Well, okay.
This is my first question, and my second question is about time frame. Because is your question actually open for a certain number of days? Because if it's open, I don't know, for 1 month, for example, things may change, and management may change, and the environment may change. So, I mean, the guys that say, I'm not ready, I'm not available to answer today, not tomorrow, not after tomorrow, not the whole weekend after I'm on holidays for 3 weeks. I mean, then is it worth the answer?
Okay, so the second question is about the scheduling of these things and how long they stay open for. And the easy answer to that is however long you want them to be open. But I think some of the questions about I'll do it after my holidays comes from that's what people react to on engagement surveys because they're such a big pain in the arse to do. I know from experience that these things take 2 or 3 seconds to respond to. So our experience says that issue that you're specifically referring to disappears very quickly. And so does the one of we need 5 out of the 10 to be a valid data sample comes from the fact that people don't want to respond to them. And we're really pleased when we get over 5 out of the 10. You know, we're expecting 98% of people to do these things if you take action as a result. If you don't, then they'll do exactly the same and ignore you, and they won't embark in conversations with you. Does that? So you can.
It's more an ongoing dialogue, I suppose. So I wonder if you can frame it like you do in the question from a survey question, and I think what you were saying was right.
Absolutely.
It's a different.
I think
frame that you're hitting for, and our questions are grounded from where are we coming from.
Absolutely.
And not where we're, and I think
Did,
you say you're in the early stages, so
yeah.
what the system can do or what you envisage it to be.
the interesting thing,
You didn't get a conversation though.
if I leave those conversations on my device and I don't delete them, the conversation's there, and you can add more stuff to the bot and ask more questions later, so you can have a persistent history of the questions that were asked. So you don't need to every time deploy a new bot, you can just add more questions to it.
I think maybe on the reporting, because I'm thinking the practical application of it. If, for instance, I think if you have out of an engagement survey coming out that the quality of your managers is not good, and you want to have AI, some bots helping your managers to have structured one-on-ones, live, online, and helping the managers basically. Did you think of connecting? Did you think of asking feedback? Did you think of giving praise? And then the report comes out after saying in a time frame of 3 months, what did you do? And maybe then with HR, you could sit with the manager and say, yeah, you did it. Or you didn't release the bot. You released the beast.
See, I find these conversations about the practical application much more interesting because I've seen HR applications. We've got one client, they've got a bot basically, which is an interview bot. And when you're interviewing somebody for a new job, You just type their name into the interview bot, and it pulls up their employment history, pulls up their CV, gives it all to you there and then, gives you the results of the previous interview, just gives you, so it's really useful, but it's not, it helps, but it doesn't really help to change the organization. And
but it should give some instant reward, either to the manager or to the person who's typing it in.
the comment is about instant reward that it gets. I don't know why, but people like interacting with things in this way. There's something sticky about it. There's something that isn't an email, that isn't a big survey. It's partly the instantaneous nature of it, and that's why it's growing so quickly.
How does it pull data? I work in a 53,000 employee company, still working on Lotus Notes for security reasons. So is it SAP? Is it Workday?
You might survey them on how much they like Lotus Notes.
I know. It's a big issue. But, so, but it costs email, salary, your manager. So where does it pull from? That's not the easiest part.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the more sophisticated, the more things you hook them into, the more complicated it is to build a bot.
Yeah. So
The simple pulse.
Minimum requirements sounds like Workday should fit, or SAP, or what is it?
No, as long as there is an API from whatever system you want to hook it up into, it's pretty.
So it means you need a data transfer from your ERP system into your bot system.
Yeah, and that's why it's easier to do this with internal platforms than it is to do it with external platforms.
That could be then you have to put it from different sources.
Absolutely.
Which is the one of the reasons that Phil and I got together to do this is because of OrangeTrail's work with installing Workplace. Now, Workplace is that Facebook tool for internally. If an organization is installing Workplace, everything that you are thinking about, you're asking about, goes away. All those concerns go away because you now have a very neat and tidy platform where all of the data and all of your employees are on one place. So for a company that is already on Workplace, to deploy something like this is literally, I mean, you do it with your eyes closed.
So
For companies that don't, it requires a bit more. Yes, you might have to hook it into here, there, and someplace else, but you know, we don't know. That's one of the reasons we want to hear from you too, is how do you get this going in a not so convenient environment?
What you don't want to do with this is do AFDS, Active Directory systems, basically all your people and who their boss is and all the structural stuff. You don't want to do that for a bot. You want to do that for a platform and then put the bots on the top of it to take that data. It's like that's like you know, sledgehammer to crack a very small nut.
Well, you mentioned that it's a bit more difficult for an external system. Do you consider cloud system an external system?
No, that's about cloud systems being more difficult, or no, it's not more difficult, but it's more difficult for it to make a decision for risk and compliance people.
It's your internal rules. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
It's about internal
rules. But it's like you can deploy a lot of these things without IT knowledge at all. So I can build a bot and give you one of these links and you can just look at it and use it and you get the results from it without any involvement of any IT people at all. And you say, I'm a technical guy. I'm not at all. I can build these, but Judith, one of my colleagues over there, she built it. How technical are you? Okay. There you go. Okay. So perfect background for building technical bots. So the technical side of it isn't that important, but hooking it into your systems, that's a whole lot.